Alright guys, today it's time to make some slabs. I got a pretty decent sized piece of clay here. And you definitely want to make sure that you wedge this thoroughly. And I always say it 50 times, but you know, some people lose track. And you'll get a good feel. You might want to keep track at first, and eventually you'll get a feel for what a piece of clay wedged 50 times should look like, feel like. If you don't wedge, you'll certainly regret it, especially when you're making a slab. You need to have perfect and very consistent clay moisture content. If you don't have that, it's going to be a real pain to try to make an even and consistent slab. You have dry spots and wet spots, and that's just no fun. So, the end of my wedge here, mush the ram's nose back into the cylinder as a ram's head wedging technique. And then I'm going to make the outside of my piece of clay as, wedging is tiring. So I have to work on my clay muscles. All right, you're definitely going to need one of these. This is your metal rib of death. Make sure you have that out, and you probably need your needle tool also. But don't go without this one. It's a must-have for making these slabs. Okay. So like I said, I want to smooth out any cracks or any irregularities in the outside of this piece of clay. You might want to start with a little less than this. This is for expert mode. Now I'm going to put it on the table, and I'm going to start to hit the clay, and I'm using the heel of my palm. Don't use the wrist, okay? A lot of people come in and start hitting it like this. Also, don't spank the clay. That just ends up hurting your hand. You actually want to physically contact the clay and start to flatten this out. No more than 5 or 6 taps at first, because the clay wants to stick. And remember, wet area on the table attracts clay, and then clay attracts more clay. Smooth out any cracks around the edges. See? It makes it somewhat uneven, but then when you flip it over, you get the even side. After a while, I go around the outside and then spiral my way into the middle. Try to get a nice, even, don't ignore the edges, but don't focus on the middle either. And keep flipping it. I wouldn't do this with super wet clay. Maybe after your 50 wedges, if it still feels really, really wet, you'll want to maybe wedge it another 50 times, just to make sure that it's not sticking to the table. Nothing more frustrating than getting it stuck this early. And flip it into a dry spot on the table so that it doesn't, get tempted to stick. Again, going around the outside and spiraling my way into the middle. One thing I see a lot, some of my students have really sharp bones right here in their wrist, and they'll come through and really dig some super deep holes. Pits into the clay. You want to try to even out your hand so that you're making more contact here and you're getting more of a flat impression. And then spiral your way into the center. Right over here, little crack starting to happen. I'm going to fill that back in and make it smooth again. I take this until it's about an inch thick, which we are pretty close to right now. Still pretty even all the way across the surface. Could we fire this? Sure. It'd be super thick wall though for what we're about to do with the slab project. So I wouldn't stop here. In fact, we're going to keep going really far past this point. All right, I'm going to let the table, get a little dust on it. I'm just holding this very carefully. Let's check one more time to make sure that we got all the cracks around the edges. Those just get worse and worse and worse. So I just flip it over and smooth them out. You're hoping for a little bit of flexibility. You see that? Don't try that. But you can see that it's got a little bit of waviness to it when you hang in the air. You need that. Okay? Now, to pull the slab on the table, a nice concrete table, what we're going to do is come out straight in front of us. You can see that my wrists are pointed down. Okay? We definitely want wrists pointed down. And you're going to come up with the clay. You come down, let the back hit first. Your fingertips will brush the edge of the table, and your hands should end up behind you. All right? So again, up, let the clay flop. The rear end of the clay has to hit first. And a split second later, the front hits. And your hands, it's important that you follow through. People will come down like this, and their hands end up in front of them. Well, the clay is going to do a nosedive right on the table, and you'll be starting from square one. So let that follow through happen, and you can go kind of slow the first couple. Come up, let it flop. Pick it up from the back, come up, let it flop. I'm being real gentle, just till you get the hang of it. You don't want to be experimenting later on. It'll be kind of stressful. As the thinner this gets, the harder it is to handle. Come up. This time I'm grabbing it from the right side. Up. Follow through. Grab it from the left. Just going to give you a quick close-up here. Can you see the cracks that are happening in the surface? Okay, those are bad. And I've let them go. Not too long. You know, they're still visible, and I don't think I've let them go too long. But you want to fix those. You want to stay on top of that early on. This is really important. You're going to use the rounded side of your metal rib of death. Okay? And you're going to hold it, you see this, with your thumb in the middle and your fingers almost at the edge. It's almost like a continuation of your fingertips. Thumb goes in the back and press with your thumb. This makes this really hard. Okay? And you want to press down and drag across the clay surface. You want to press hard enough that you get a little bit of clay collecting in here. Remember, don't run your fingers this way along the edge. You will cut yourself. Pull the clay off straight away. Now you see, pretty, smooth, cracks, smooth. This is bad. This is good. Smooth the rest of it out. So remember, it shouldn't be spread on like peanut butter and jelly. Although at the end, you can kind of do a few of those just to really make it pretty. You really want to scrape the surface with this tool. It comes in and scrapes. I'm going to gently pick it up, flip it over. By the way, you see all the moisture that's coming out of the slab? This is going to be very dry. I want to keep it wet after I finish pulling the slab. If you see air bubbles popping up through here, you did a bad job wedging. We need to practice your wedge. And you'll see there'll be little blisters. You can pop them with a needle and try to get some of the air out. It might help your form later on. Pull in two different directions here. Make it beautiful and smooth. Pick it up from this side. Pretty good size slab. A lot of people, when they pick it up, their hands are too close together, and you'll rip the slab. Okay? And if something like that happens, you end up with a tear. I'll tear this on purpose. You got to cut those off as soon as possible. That's why I have my needle tool. If you had a rip like that, I wouldn't try to fix it. I just come in and take that piece off and save that. You can see that's a really nice, consistent slab. So I wouldn't get rid of that. You might be able to put that on some plastic and make something out of it later, a handle or a decoration to add on to the outside of your piece. Sometimes you just have to cut off a lot of the cracks that are happening around the edge. Okay? If this gets too big for you, no problem. Cut it in half, throw each one, and then you're good to go. Okay? But I'm getting to the point now, I'm almost at a 1/4 inch. These are very graceful landings. See, I'm not getting any wrinkles. Okay, and that little come out and let it flop. Very important. All right, that's a very good looking slab. And you see now I'm ready to, it's using the wrong side. I'm wondering why I'm getting lines. If you use the straight side, it's weird, but you'll get these little corner lines. If you think the straight side would make it straight, but actually it ends up digging into the surface and making a bunch of lines. Okay. So from here, this can be cut up into all sorts of different shapes, and you'll have a very fun time making a slab project out of a piece this big. You'll probably end up with something a little smaller, but your assignment is to make a 12-inch slab out of a good handful of clay. This is probably a 16-inch slab, maybe even more from here to here. I don't have a tape measure, so I can't measure it. But yours does not have to be that big, just 12 inches of usable material. You should be able to flip it over easily. It should be smooth on both sides. And after you get that, you can wrap this up, cut it into some smaller pieces, keep it very wet. Spray, 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 because remember, we just took a ton of moisture out of that clay. Okay? Thank you, and good luck.